Okay, great. So welcome to this Pocosito update. And I know it's Saturday, so this is kind of an experiment. And today we have Eric and Alex talking to us from Detroit. It's kind of exciting in two ways. For one, they're outdoors. They're gonna give us a virtual field tour of their location for the future Unity House, and they're gonna introduce a little bit what they are already doing and what they plan on doing, and also answer, of course, any questions that you might have. So fingers crossed for good connectivity, internet-wise, and we'll see how good the infrastructure is in Detroit. Thank you, guys, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, great preface, Max. And just to add to that, we don't have internet, running water, or power. So kind of a blessing and a curse. We're forced to get really clever and very modest with our resource usage. So kind of a good thing, actually. But just quick introductions. My name is Alex. We have Mr. Eric Douglas here as well. We are two folks on the organization called Graft Living. We'll give a really quick introduction of our organization before we jump into the little field trip, if we can call it that. It's a really tiny, modest space. But I do believe, Eric, you and Max go back a little bit.
So yeah, I met Max when I was working on the Detroit Climate Action Collaborative and with Detroiters working for environmental justice. And back then we were doing a grass-led effort to create the city's first climate action plan.
Gotcha. So that's how we made the connection. So again, thank you for taking time out, Miss Ashley and I think Aaron on a Saturday. It's great to virtually meet you.
Nice all right, to meet you as well.
All right, so we are on site. Let's. I don't want to bore y'all with a PowerPoint presentation. We do too much of that in our day-to-day job. But again, our organization is called Graft Living. Very broad mission statement where we want to reconnect with humanity and nature. So we're doing that with a lot of different activities. I won't go through all of them, but I did want to give you folks a tour of our lot. And to do that, I need to make sure that I give a little bit of an overview on what our goal is. So I think we've seen some examples of this, but maybe not all in the same location. We're building like a micro ecosystem prototype in a Detroit infill lot. Detroit's really a special place. If you want to look for challenges in all dimensions, the triple bottom line challenges, then you can find it here in Detroit, whether it's social, economic, and environmental challenges. It's all here. So we think that not only that, but the nature of just, sort of like an abandoned infrastructure. We have very mature roadways, railways, waterways, things like that. But then we have like a Swiss cheese dynamic going on with blighted neighborhoods of just giant holes of vacancy. So what we have in front of us is an opportunity to sort of redevelop, and reimagine these communities of the future not only using our technology and our knowledge, but our wisdom. So what are we actually going to bring to the table to make a more inclusive community that's more healthy for our neighbors and our people, but also for the planet? So this is a really early snapshot. You'll see that this has evolved quite a bit, but what we're trying to show on the screen is small scale examples of the core elements that can sort of create this, what we're calling the micro ecosystem. All right, so we're going to go through in our tour, we're going to go over the food forest. So everything kind of surrounding the media that's surrounding us in this urban garden, which is very common in Detroit, is raised beds and people recreating blighted, abandoned spaces as a space for healthy food. But we're sort of trying to take that further. So not just urban gardening, but actually a food forest, bringing in native plants that actually people can interact with, either edible, pollinators, medicinal, and things of that nature. We're also going to tour our greenhouse, which is, to us, I don't know, it's kind of our child, very special. And we're going to go through each element there and why the greenhouse really does embody a lot of our core values. And those core values are definitely being taken forward to what Max alluded to, which is Unity House, which for us at a big picture, it's sort of like a proof of concept model home for affordable and environmental housing. So using, I'm an engineer by background. Eric is a million jobs by background. So we're bringing all that together and saying, how do we sort of tackle this housing crisis? And then for this community, we'll talk about how the building, once it's constructed, is going to be used for space-based learning, educational platforms, STEM, and environmentalism. We have those things married together. And if you folks aren't aware, Michigan gets very cold. So we do need an indoor setting to be able to interact with the local youth on a year-round basis. So we'll go through all those things, and this is kind of the lay of the land. Let me see. Let me stop sharing so that we don't have to stare at our screens. Was there something?
Yeah. So to kind of build on what Alex said, is another really great thing with Detroit, in a twisted way, is because you have all these struggles with the triple bottom line, is you're able to have conversations that would be even more difficult than most other cities, particularly around infrastructure. That, like a big impact of climate change here is basement flooding and stormwater infrastructure. And that traditional infrastructure, the tax base isn't here to maintain it, let alone replace it. And that infrastructure is right around 100 years old. So that's, and that's just one example. But the thing is when you have new ideas here, in some ways you can get traction a little bit more, because it's, a lot of the powers that be are already thinking we have to rethink, these paradigms that we've been in, particularly around infrastructure and neighborhoods. And this really, I think, is going to become very fertile ground for sustainability and green building.
Awesome. All right. So why don't we go into the tour? Is there any questions on sort of kind of like the hand wavy portion of the presentation?
Oh, just a question behind you in the background. Is that just the neighborhood, or is that part of the buildings? Is that part of your project, or is that the neighbors?
This is the neighbor. You see it.
Neighbor.
Yeah, they can hear you. We're recording on this one. So this is our neighbor. We're surrounded by, we're in the middle of an R1 zone, so residential. Right. So we got houses. And then Detroit has a lot of alleyways, which aren't really common in some cities, but the major roadways are connected by alleys, which are kind of cool, but they're also a risk for rodents and dumping and sorts of shady activities. So that's another challenge that is unique to Detroit, to reinvent and kind of rethink the way alleys are utilized. But anyways, you see a ton of houses, and we'll go through like, what are some of the clever ways that we're but partnering up with our immediate neighbors, for example, for rainwater systems. But let's see, you don't need to see my face anymore. So why don't we just get into it then? So let's start with the food forest portion. What you'll see here is, this is less than 1 year old growth, but ultimately I can show you the bird's eye view, but everything, all the beds around this garden, sort of in the periphery, are intended to be native and edible plants. So right now, you see all these pink flags. We worked with a local high school cohort, and we sort of did a plant identification workshop. And we walked around and tried to identify these different plants. Right now, we have over 3 dozen different species. So we have hazelnut, rhubarb, sage, honeyberry, honeysuckle, whatever people like to call it, sorrel, which is a species of spinach that's perennial, also very lemony and zesty, one of my favorites out here. We have arugula. Rosehip is actually edible, and you can actually, make oils and different sort of like soaps and stuff like that. So this is just one of the beds. We have amaranth, lemon balm, and then on the other side, so this is on the right side of the lot. On the other side, we're doing some mulch work, so disregard. We have grapes, blackberry, raspberry, strawberry. So this is kind of like the berry side on the north side, where we're going to get a lot of sunlight. So the thought process is, beyond these raised beds, which are sort of common in Detroit. By the way, quick sidebar, this these beds are from a General Motors assembly plant. This brought in electrical components from Korea, and they had no way to repurpose these. So another beautiful thing about Detroit, which we'll leverage in some of these other elements that we're going to talk about in a second here, is the heavy industry. So with heavy industry comes a lot of waste, which in the sustainability eyes is an opportunity for repurposing and salvaging. So that's just one example. But again, just back on topic, these raised beds, we have 12 of them scattered throughout the garden where neighbors can come and open plant, as well as students. We have a number of student programs with the local youth that we work together, and we teach them gardening and basic basic like healthy food skills, regreening or reskilling the green skills. And then building past that, this is kind of where all this food forest comes in. Not very common. People have never heard of it or definitely have never seen it in this part of the country. It's sort of a newer idea. We're embracing biodiversity, different heights of plants, a lot of perennial and native plants so that it's actually less maintenance than a typical garden. Anything you want to add to that, Eric?
Yeah, I think also our Pollinator Garden.
Oh,
is,
yeah.
This has been immensely successful.
Oh, hang on. I don't think they can hear you if you're talking that way. So in addition to the edible plants, it's kind of late in the season for us, but Eric is showing us the Pollinator Garden here.
Yeah, so you see we've got some things in bloom over here, and how this is set up is these are native perennial plants, but it's set up so a little something's always in bloom and a little something's always kind of fading out and going dormant. And this has attracted so many pollinators, it's crazy. So this last summer, I wasn't even that serious about it. I just spent like maybe 45 minutes photographing and documenting different butterflies and bees, and I documented 18 different species of pollinators coming just to this little patch of garden here in Detroit, which is quite remarkable given the amount of industry we're surrounded by. We have a big oil refinery not too far from here, and auto plants, the cement factories. So to bring these pollinators that desperately need the help is been very successful with this garden.
Yeah. So again, pollinators, in addition to like edible and medicinal plants, we have quite a bit more. We don't have to go through all of them, but I guess that's a great note from Eric. We're sort of trying to rebuild the pollinator population. We're partnering with a wife and husband duo. They're sort of like a startup of permaculture experts who are just from outside Detroit proper. So they've been helping us curate and make sure that all these are native, and they're coaching us in a lot of ways to make sure we sort of put them into the ground properly and maintain them properly. Not the most beautiful time for the pollinator garden, but to Eric's point, there's always something for the different insects and hummingbirds.
Yeah, so just yesterday I photographed where we still have monarch butterflies here.
Yeah. Yep. So again, that's the food forest. We have quite a bit more over here. Some amaranth. We have a raspberry bush. Oh, sorry. Background noise. As you can tell, we are in the neighborhoods. And then we have service berries, hazelnut trees, and these are, obviously young, but the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago or something.
Second best time is 19 years ago.
So over the next few years, we're going to see this grow and mature, and it's already really, really beautifying quite a bit.
Yeah, and also might want. So the neighborhood has been very supportive. We've worked with the next door neighbor here. She allowed us to tie into her rain gutter so we can collect rain to water the plants, and that's been hugely helpful. And that's also just a little bit more water that's not going into our stormwater system.
Yeah. So as Eric alluded to before, Detroit has a huge stormwater infrastructure issue. Pretty much every rain, it seems like nowadays, they're giving that, flash flood warning or flooding warning. So we have a lot of impermeable surface. We have very old plumbing systems, old pipes. So just doing some of these basics, again, out of necessity, we needed to tap into their water, but also it's doing a lot for the environment as well. And another huge thing is just to piggyback off that, our neighborhood and our community partners have been instrumental. So back to that like triple bottom line, that social element of it. A lot of this is definitely not possible if we didn't build a solid relationship with, the next door neighbors, the apartment unit across the street. They're giving us a lot of compost and food waste. This neighbor here, Juan, he has helped us refill our aquaponics system as the water levels deplete. So again, the social element is tremendously powerful. We're learning a lot of what it really means to develop community. What does that big C word even really mean? We're getting a much better sense of that.
Yeah, and also another nice thing with growing food here is in this community, we have a lot of squatters. Detroit still has a lot of abandoned homes, so you don't see homelessness in the same way as you do in many other cities. It's not quite as visible, but sometimes there are people that come here and get their food, and sometimes we'll have families show up and they pick some squashes or some tomatoes, and sometimes this is helping feed people that are very much in need.
That's right. Yeah. And just to add to that too, I know we're throwing a lot of information at you, but Detroit is a very interesting city again because of it. It's actually a quite diverse metro city. However, if you looked at like a heat map, you could see how segregated it actually is. So we have like district lines, county lines that actually divide the major ethnic groups. So we're in a predominantly actually Latinx neighborhood. And they're finding very unique ways to utilize different plants. Like they're using the flowers of the squash plants to make huevos rancheros or something like that.
The leaves.
And the leaves and things like that. And then next door in Detroit, next to Detroit, there's a city called Dearborn, a very heavily Middle Eastern population. So we have connections and networks and friends, and they come by and they bring their friends. And then they just start harvesting the grape leaves. We're like, oh no, the grapes aren't producing fruit, but they're just harvesting the grape leaves because you can make, the grape leaf rice wraps. Got the name of that, but it's just that's kind of another dimension that we're really trying to sort of tear down some of these walls, these like imaginary walls, get different people of different socioeconomic background, different ethnic background, different generations. Eric really loves a bit different generations because the grandmas and grandfathers in this neighborhood want to share some knowledge, and food is a really good platform to do that. So now we're already seeing that mixing going on just by creating that platform.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've already started, we have a community table that was a utility spool that was illegally dumped in the neighborhood, wheeled it over, made a big round table here, and then people from the neighborhood came by and hand painted the entire Mayan calendar on the table. And kind of the plan is to have some like an earthen oven and a burner so people can cook here, maybe pick something from the garden, cook, and we can all learn from each other. And that goes back to part of our namesake is we all come from different backgrounds, but let's come together, learn from each other, and build a better world. So, and that can be different race, cultures, economic backgrounds, generations. But one of the things that we identified, no matter what your cultural background is, normally you learn your culture from the elders in your family around food. And normally it's grandma. And grandmas are always more than happy to come cook and tell young people what's up.
Yeah. No, I love that. So, what we're really focusing in on is let's create that platform, let's create the space, let's make it safe, inclusive, beautiful. We're still working on tidying up and really, really defining what it all looks like. But if you have beauty, if you have value, if you have inclusion, then people sort of seem to be defining exactly how they want to use it. And we're seeing that evolve continuously. So that's sort of our philosophy with the surrounding food forests in the garden space. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, and so, and with us, we've been getting a ton of support. We've been mainly relying on private donations and crowdfunding. And so part of what we're doing today is, we're crowdfunding for the Unity House. And that's, and that's like pretty incredible, because one of the things that we've been trying to do is push green building with actual building, because there's a lot of architectural firms locally that will talk about it, and we're not seeing stuff get done. So if we can we're hoping this will be a little bit of a Sputnik moment locally to kind of move some of the professionals towards embracing this in real action, to say, hey, a bunch of people can crowdfund a higher standard sustainable building, then kind of takes away an excuse for saying, hey, nobody wants it and it can't happen.
Yeah, so as you can tell, Eric has been in the industry a while, so he's he knows where the roadblocks are. Let's hold that thought before we get into Unity House stuff, because I did want to share a couple renderings, because if I showed you where we're at now, you're gonna be like, ugh. So I want to show you renderings on where we're actually headed, and then maybe we can discuss some of the fundraisers. Okay. Any questions on the food forests? I could show you a different area, answer any questions before we move on to like the greenhouse.
So you said, Alex, people come and harvest. Do they also like help with the planting and the maintenance?
Yeah, we have people that come and water, and help planting with the maintenance. Also, a lot of the children in our STEM through sustainability program live in the neighborhood. A lot of times they come, they help. So it's been, it's been like really great. And then, particularly with the kids, and then we're always looking at how do we build these kids up more, because it's, a lot of them are trying to figure out what they want to do and want to build the skills to, go out and make a life for themselves. So we're trying to always, how do we find ways to, help them develop those skills too. So.
Yeah. And just to answer your question, Max, we started this project around 2.5 years ago. And in terms of the raised beds, we tried to keep that as open and inclusive and kind of like lawless as possible, so that people feel most free and unintimidated to just do whatever. I think we're kind of hitting an impasse, if I could speak, candidly. We are seeing some portions being neglected and some portions being over allocated and things like that. So we're sort of starting to have to define a little bit of structure around how these are maintained, used, maybe we like apportion off particular beds to reserve, and then some of them are open access, just so that people don't feel like they're stepping on each other's toes. So that's being worked on. We have a weekly community meeting, so with the neighborhood leaders and those who are a vested interest, we come together and we sort of define what the structure looks like moving forward. So definitely next year, so 2022 season, we're going to start with a little bit more structure. So here's the watering schedule, here are the beds that are allocated, and things like that. But yeah, so we're sort of learning as we go.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the food forest and the urban gardening?
I just had like a big picture question. How did you select this site in particular? Like, I'm sure there were a lot of eligible locations. What's the best way to approach positioning one of these?
That's a great question. So, the biggest and most primary reason why we found ourselves in this lot was the proximity to anchor institutions. So, Eric and I, we don't necessarily look like the surrounding community. We need to build partnerships with trusted anchor organizations such as Cesar Chavez Academy Middle School and High School. They're literally one block down the street that way. Our long-term vision is to build an after-school program where they come and they sort of like tend to the space and things like that. So proximity to the elementary schools and the local school system, And then we also have one of our main partners here, UNI. They've been operating in this specific region, serving this specific Southwest Detroit community for 30 years. So the founders, and including the current board of directors, we had an ongoing relationship with some of these other organizations, and we want to make sure that we're sort of building off that trust. Especially in Detroit, there's a lot of jaded and a history of like helicopter projects. So we had to really tread mindfully, you know, as we identified a space. That was the main reason. Is there anything else to add to that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and part of this is that this is also one of those neighborhoods that doesn't really get attention or investment. When we hear about Detroit's comeback, it tends to be very targeted neighborhoods. And that in of itself has been controversial because you have a city where the per capita income is about $26,000, and yet you have neighborhoods and developers coming in building $500,000-$600,000 condo units. So there's kind of a mismatch. And then, so what we wanted to do was something that is much more grass up and something where, you know, the people that are already here can have access to, you know, any improvement and really have some ownership in it. And so, and this neighborhood is, not one of the kind of posh, popular neighborhoods in the mainstream.
That's right. There are definitely pockets of what they call opportunity zones in Detroit where they're like dumping. Well, okay, that's harsh language. They're putting a lot of investment in to revitalize the fascia and bring in economic stimulation and things of that nature. This is not one of those neighborhoods. However, just to piggyback off Eric's point, Ashley, that was kind of the main rationale for picking the lot. There are a lot of like surprises. So as we, you know, become very rooted in this space, there's a lot of like beautiful nuggets and surprises that are, you know, working in our favor and challenges. So to Eric's point, we are outside of these opportunity zones. We are just adjacent to a very heavily invested in area called Corktown. And we sort of, in the next 10 years, without a doubt, that development is going to encroach west. And this area is going to start feeling the same double-edged sword of gentrification and economic, you know, development. So, you know, we're still far from this stage in our project, but we would love to develop more infill lots like this as a land-based cooperative. So we've thrown the idea around, we've done a lot of research, but, you know, when it's not there yet, but the thought is, you know, different neighbors spend their time and their hours convert to equity in owning the land, because, you know, land-based ownership is one of the best defenses against the forces of gentrification and sort of like democratizing wealth. So that's one of the things that we're like, wow, this is a great opportunity for us to combat some of these sort of these forces. Some of the other little surprise nuggets, we are in a, like I mentioned, heavily Latino community, strong sense of family and community in this area. So
Alex, the sound just switched somehow.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's we can still hear you, but it's kind of more metallic all of a sudden.
Okay. How's
It
this?
just happened. No, it's still the same. I don't know if anything. Could just continue. Just we can hear you still, so might be the connection.
Okay, yeah, maybe sometimes. All right, we'll walk around. Am I still metallic robotic?
Kind of.
Let me see. If I put these headphones on, Eric and I will have to be ear to ear. Let me see if this will work. If you can bear with me.
Cool.
AirPod. Hang on, one sec.
Yeah, that's good. Actually, now it's good. I don't know what you just did, but maybe you just had your...
How does this sound, yo?
This is perfect.
It's better? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, I guess we're Siamese twins now.
So what I was saying was heavily, you know, Latino community, we're seeing such a strong sense of community. We're getting reprimanded when we're making a mess of things and keeping the neighborhood not tidy enough, and in the best way, in the most, you know, loving way, like a parent would. So that is definitely working in our favor, I would say. So much attention on the children and giving them opportunities for a better future. So when we talk engineering and STEM topics, there's a lot of perked up interest. So feeling the love, feeling the support. Obviously not all downhill. There's definitely some ups and downs, but that's definitely working in our favor. And then I think the last thing is the size of this space is it's very modest. Ashley, that's also working in our favor. Eric and I you're not professionals by any means. We're not super experienced. It's feeling manageable. And as we, kind of wrap up the final stages of this with Unity House, we think we can tackle on some bigger, formerly blighted areas and convert that into a highly valuable, beautiful space. So for all those reasons, it's hope that was the long-winded way to say this is how we chose this.
No, it's perfect. Thank you.
Great question. Okay, any last questions, or we can definitely come back to it as we go through the tour.
Yeah, I actually had a question. How do you involve the community in how do you engage them in the placemaking aspect of creating this space?
That's a great question.
So we did it the old-fashioned way. Like very early on in this project, we started knocking on doors, and fortunately that was pre-pandemic. But we, knocking on doors, having events here at the garden. So we got a lot of feedback on.
Well, if I could, before we get that far, so the catalyzing of the space is big. So, I think people, their interest is perked up when formerly like knee-high grass and hazards and just eyesore gets cleaned up. So the first thing that drew people's attention was us just cleaning the space. People are very thankful for that. But to Eric's point, then we had to start sharing awareness, like not only what our intentions and our values are, but what are your overarching goals? So door knocking to share that we're going to have our first picnic. We had a barbecue picnic, brought in local caterers, and we just had tents and music and all this and that, a little bit of fanfare. But that was a great catalyst to say, okay, there's stuff that's going to happen here. It's happening, and there's more planned. Then we did the kind of tried and true dot board voting. If you folks are familiar, we had like big boards of saying, okay, what do you want to see actually with the gardening space? What do you want to see with the programming? What do you want to see that's preserved and untouched so that you can define your own programming? And people vote with colored dots. So that was our first sort of step into gathering community feedback and building some local sovereignty. From there, we did a number of more door knocking activities. Maintaining engagement is as hard as building the first engagement. So we're getting emails, leaving flyers, holding regular events. And I think the best thing is when we support neighbors in defining their own events. So we had a Dia de los Muertos, which is Day of the Dead. An idea came from a neighbor. It's like, I'd love to have a celebration. So we support them in bringing all the supplies, creating the space, getting the food, and we put an altar together. It was actually really good. I was blown away. There was a lot of the children here have busted bikes, like busted. I'm surprised they even work. So one of the community members said, okay, we should have a bike repair day. So we brought in a local person to donate their time, brought all their tools and spare parts, and fixed like at least 10 bikes of the neighbor kids. Started with one, and they shout out, hey, Jimena, this guy's fixing bikes, bring your bike. And that word of mouth is powerful, and that's kind of like how we just keep doing it. Definitely noticing, neighbors coming in and coming out. They're not necessarily going to be as steadily involved as Eric and I, but it's an open door. We're definitely not going to lock people in. As people see the value, and as we continue to exchange value with each other, then the right people are coming in at the right time.
Yeah, and it's been like a really beautiful process. Somebody had their hand raised. Oh, okay.
I think I was just to say hi. Yeah. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can go in the tour. I don't know if you can do it with the Siamese.
We're gonna try.
Yeah. Okay, let me.
It's gonna be like a three-legged race here.
Okay. All right. So here, let me flip the screen here. I want to share with y'all the greenhouse. Here, do you mind if I do this? And then I'll give it back to you when we open it up. Sorry. So I'll do the abridged version because we could do the long version, but I think we're running out of time here. So this greenhouse, very special and near and dear to Eric and I, our hearts, because it took around 9 months, so it's almost like we gave birth. But ultimately, piggybacking off the previous comment about the heavy industry in Detroit, we actually, the 95% of this build is with salvaged material. So we have glass that was donated from storm replacement jobs, storm window replacement jobs. The steel was actually a misorder for industrial grade catwalk steel tubing. And I just blasted like 30 phone calls to different heavy steel mills. And they're like, oh yeah, please take this off our inventory. It's taking up space and we'll give it to you for free. I wrote them a receipt for a tax deductible donation and it's a win-win. So we hauled that off. Welders helped us weld it together as a part of their welding apprenticeship program, donated their time and expertise. I cannot believe how that panned out. In fact, if we had more time, I want to share that story sometime. It's pretty miraculous. The understory here, the stem wall, that is urbanite, meaning crushed up concrete scrap. We actually got paid to take this off someone's lot. They said, here's 20 bucks, just get it out of here. And then all the mortar and this back wall is made from adobe. It's called cob, actually. It's clay, sand, straw, water that was actually using the displaced earth from the foundation job. Okay, so super cool, we think, and I think it's a beautiful design. Definitely it's consistent with our philosophy, trying to leverage as much waste and divert as much waste as possible in creating beauty and value. All right, this structure is 120 square foot footprint, so really tiny, but you don't need a building permit in the city of Detroit to build a structure of that size. So now what we're saying is, all right, let's maximize the footprint and let's maximize the head height. So what we're doing here is our goal is to enable year-round food production and leverage some different technologies to do so. So now we have a small footprint, but we have a tall head height. So we're going vertical gardening, aquaponics. I want to do just a really, really lightning round. This is all recorded, so maybe you can slow it down when it's being played back. Just the design elements, okay? This building is at a 17-degree angle from the lot lines. So the lot lines are like this. Sorry, the lot lines like this. This building is at a weird angle. So when people first come into the lot, they're like, this building's at a strange angle. The reason is we are facing solar south, perfectly solar south. Let's realign our structures to nature, right? We're reconnecting to nature. That's one of our missions. And these angles of the windows are actually designed. This one is perpendicular to winter solstice. Michigan is very, very cold. And if you're at any incident angle from the solar rays, you're actually reflecting radiation, but we want to take all of that in. So in the coldest time of the year, we are aligned to take in all of the solar radiation. This one up here is actually perpendicular to the summer solstice. So we actually put shading up here when it's too hot. Let's start reflecting the hottest times of the year. All right. This back wall is actually really amazing. It's not 100% complete yet. One of Eric's brainchilds here. This is made out of cob, like I mentioned before, 100% utilizing the displaced clay and sand from the foundation work. Really cool. Labor of love, I'll tell you that much. If anyone wants to do something like this, ask us.
Do it.
Do it, but also find friends. Find all your friends, call your family. Okay. We have low-tech geothermal. Okay, this is a 4-inch rain tube. It goes down 6.5 feet under the Earth's surface, goes out all the way to the sidewalk, snakes back, and then it comes back here. So what this does is, in the wintertime, we're going to pull cold air in and exhaust warmer air up top. We can't promise 52 degrees. 52 degrees is kind of that magic number of geothermal. And then in the summertime, you pull in hot air here and push in cooled air here. All right, creating a moderate space, buffering the elements of nature is the whole purpose of a greenhouse. So
and is it working just with the thermal effect, or do you have a fan attached?
Oh, you know, we have thought about that, of using like nature, the prairie dog tunnels have a natural heating and cooling, passive heating and cooling. We haven't figured that out yet. We have little computer fans that are running. And then there's a microcontroller that's up top that you can't see that we have some engineers working on controlling that and automating that whole process.
Yeah, and also part of that is with the technology that's also makes our project a bit unique is early on we saw that particularly on natural building and passive solar stuff, there's a lot of theory, not a lot of stuff that's been built. There's been some stuff built, but not a lot. And particularly for the upper Midwest, absolutely no empirical data. So we have data loggers everywhere. We have in this back wall at specific depths in the wall, thermal sensors to, so we want to record and model how well that works, so we can get a better idea, because this is 12 to 14 inches thick. Can we do the same thing with a heavy coat of plaster?
Well, sorry,
nobody knows.
Let me add to that. I think I just want to make sure people are aware of what we're talking about. So this back wall is thick clay, cob, adobe, whatever you want to call it, and that behaves as a very good thermal mass. So in the daytime, it's going to be absorbing radiative heat, and in the nighttime, when the sun goes away, it releases it back into the space. Traditionally, people use things like concrete and cement for something like this. But we all know, I hope, that that's very intense in terms of water and energy. This is intense. This is intense for energy as well, but it's more human energy, and you get a great workout, right? So what Eric and I are saying is like, okay, that's great in theory, but let's censor the crap out of it and start measuring stuff and seeing, is it actually doing what we expected it to do? Maybe we overdid it, which we do find out is not uncommon.
Yeah.
All right, let me just do a time check here. We got around 10 minutes. That's the back wall. We have sorry, Eric, do you want to lead the aquaponics thing in
Sure.
Maybe in like 4 minutes, and we'll switch over to Unity House?
Hello. So, all right, so on the aquaponics system, I think this is, okay. I got it. All right, so your phone. So what we have is fish. We sprung these fish. These are feeder fish from the pet store. So we figured they were consigned to be eaten alive. So we thought we might as well spring a few of these guys that are like on death row, essentially. So we put them in a quarantine tank in my apartment, and the survivors all kind of made it here. So as the fish exhale and have their excrement, that's very nitrogen rich, but it's not accessible by plant roots directly. So what happens is everything overflows into a sump here, and then we have a pump that goes into this gravel bed, and it mimics a coastal wetland. So about every 12 minutes, the water comes up here, it kicks off with an auto siphon, and this is kind of a standpipe. Let me get through the plants here. This is a standpipe in here like the back of your toilet, and then a pipe that's airtight on the back. So we manipulate the pressure and everything, and so every 12 minutes that kicks off. Then when the water level drops, there's holes on that. Air is introduced to the siphon, breaks the siphon. So we have that constant flooding and draining, just like a wetland. Bacteria cultures in the gravel break that waste down into plant food. The plants take everything they can. Now your water's clean for the fish and comes back into the fish thing. So every 12 minutes, just kind of mimicking the tides, or maybe on a slower level, like spring floods and riparian systems in many areas of the world. And so what our hope is we can get better crop density with this, growing organic food, particularly if we can get the verticals to work. Maybe we can, get something where you wouldn't need a lot of space, but you could grow a lot of food either for your own consumption, or maybe this could become some kind of a revenue node for many of these neighborhoods. And then, yeah, so, you know, our entire thing runs on solar panels up here. And what we also have found is to grow the same amount of crops in soil, this only uses about 9% of the water. So, you know, so when we look at, I mean, here in Michigan, we're pretty blessed with having a lot of fresh water, but, you know, many parts of the world aren't as quite as fortunate as us. And then what we also do is, you know, I'll probably hop outside. We have a solar hot water heater we made to, just as Alex was talking about before, it gets very cold in Michigan. So this is actually predominantly made from scrap 2x4s. So we have about 100 feet of polypropylene black line and repurposed black plastic. So the sun hits this, turns into heat, and then we have water from the aquaponic system slowly circulating through that. On a DC pump, I have directly wired into this solar panel, and then that heats the aquaponic system. And so, and then we've also been doing, you know, a lot of stuff, you know, with the greenhouse, with green building materials, getting into embodied carbon, recognizing, you know, maybe some ways to do things like better scope 3 emissions. So it's insulated with straw bales from a straw farm or a wheat farm about 30 miles from here. We've been doing things like vinegar-based wood stains that we're testing to see how they hold up with sun, moisture, and then I guess we can talk about Unity House pretty soon, and I will turn that back over to Alex.
You know, we could Siamese this one. It was just walking around was kind of tricky. Okay, sorry for the super rushed version. Is there any questions on the greenhouse? We do have some challenges.
We have lots of questions, but you can do a run through, and then I mean, we can ask lots of questions like what are you growing, what's the harvest levels, and so on. But let's do the run through first, and then maybe if we have time, we can do more questions at the end.
Okay.
Just so we don't miss out on Unity House.
Okay, got you. Okay. So sort of the last and most complex, heaviest portion of the project is Unity House. So we talked about the food forest, all the areas surrounding this, you know, medicinal, herbal, perennial gardens. This greenhouse built with waste that's going to produce food, and hopefully, to Max's point, we're going to really dial that in and have a real value proposition for yield. And then we have a space that's going to be used for creation. So what are we going to do with that? How are we going to teach? How are we going to do that in the wintertime when weather is not permitting, et cetera, et cetera? So this is not a container home, and I'll share with you the exact designs when I can get to my computer. But ultimately, the base layer is built on piers. Let's minimize the amount of non-permeable surface, especially in Detroit. We mentioned the flooding problem. Basements are flooded in Detroit. And I don't know if I can speak for the Midwest, the US, or whatever, but people love their stuff, all right? So we don't want to remove the storage opportunity for potential residents. So we have two 20-foot containers where you can store all your stuff, all right? So it's an above-ground basement. And on the back side, we actually have plumbing, electrical, you know, the utility lines, all that, and a composted toilet that's going to be on the back side. So now we are using this container to store stuff, not people. I don't think containers are meant to have people in them, honestly. And I'm not throwing shade at anyone who thinks that's a cool thing, but it turns out it's actually very expensive and very difficult to convert a steel box into a living quarters. It doesn't breathe, essentially. However, on top of this structure, I'll show you the designs. We're going to be building a SIP homes, structurally insulated panels. Think IKEA. Everything is flat pack shipped on site, cut to size, and erected in 4 hours. if we were a good team, if we were really, really good, then yeah, okay, 4 hours. We might take a little bit longer. But the thought and the overarching goal is hours. So the main structure shipped on site is going to be built, highly insulative, incredible performance based compared to stick build, because in Detroit, a lot of people are paying more for water and electricity than they are for their mortgage or their rent.
Right. And on top of it, in every neighborhood in the city I've organized, there's a lot of these homes have no insulation at all. So it's usually shocking for people outside of this area, but it's not uncommon for people to have $1,000, $1,500 heating bill in the winter. And what we see is there's all kinds of policy to make sure to take government money and make sure the gas utility is paid, and it keeps people in this endless loop. And so that's a big thing about how do we break that loop while we also start reducing our carbon emissions.
Yeah, it turns out that being modest with your energy and water is actually also good for your wallet. All right, so if you can figure things out, they don't have to, correct, energy burn, they don't have to be conflicting requirements, right? So that's the goal. Let me show you some renderings, which I think would paint a more vivid picture. The other cool thing is, as an engineer, I'm trying to think of ways to streamline the supply chain process. Each of those panels that are going to go on top, we're going to create a 500 square foot structure. So really, really small. It's not a tiny home per se, but you're not going to, house a full family. Each of those panels can fit inside one container. They can be packaged in one container. These are made to be shipped. So imagine disaster relief or just tremendously reduced transportation costs. Transportation costs are actually not to be neglected.
Yeah, but also when we look at modern construction, it has a massive amount of waste to it. So not only are we gaining efficiencies by doing the SIP panels, but we are also, looking at how do we reuse these containers. So potentially this house could get shipped to you, and then you use the box that it came in as part of the house.
We think it's kind of cool. Just one of the quirks. We have a lot of those cooking. Some of the other design elements, which I'll share with you in just a moment here. I'm sorry to be going over on time. Is composted toilet, like I mentioned. Eric is big onto earthen materials, so earthen floors instead of concrete floors, to be used as a thermal mass, a great performance boost. Mm-hmm. Pre-manufactured materials, green roof, rainwater, gray water. All these things that you can package in a small box is what we're going for. And then, version 2.0, version 3.0 is going to get us even closer to that mark. Our goals are triple bottom line for this structure. We're looking at, I'll share the exact goals. Maybe I'll email it out, and then y'all can look at this. We want between $160 to $200 a square foot for this first structure in terms of cost. It's not affordable necessarily, but when we're talking about more modest footprints, the total cost for this build is currently estimated at $80,000, and that's where we're doing our crowdsourcing and fundraising efforts. The other stuff is we have targets for how much water and energy efficiency we're going after. I don't know if you folks have heard of Living Future Institute or Living Building Challenge. We're going after that. So we just got paired up with a coach. They're going to walk us through the process. It's kind of like LEED, but on steroids. It's kind of intense. But I'd say let's go for the moon and see how we do there. And then finally, the community element, the triple bottom line, right? The social element. I alluded to that before. The space currently is going to be used as sort of like garden operations. So we're going to use it to kind of like as an extension to teach how do we spread more of the green skills. But then again, like we mentioned before, creating that platform and open space for the neighbors to define is also something that we want to embrace. Do they want to have events, after school tutoring, yoga? How do you repurpose all the stuff that's growing around you? Like I mentioned, rosehip. How do you make rosehip soap? All right, let's start to re-empower and create the space for people to spread skills. And these are all the types of ongoing discussions we're having. Hopefully, we get this after-school program going with the local students. They get that experience at a young age. They feel that ownership. They create the space that they want. And we build a strong sense of continuous programming with the neighbors, which will piggyback into that cooperative, land-based cooperative. So we're all trying to define how can we utilize the space. Once we understand that, then we create the value and create that cooperative so other neighbors can actually own the space. All right, so as the economic development, as the overall real estate value increases, their wealth increases. That's the overarching long-term community goal. Okay, blabbed away. Any questions on that? I can pull up a slide here.
Yeah, I think there was a question regarding the square footage, and you said it before. I think you said 500 square feet. Is that correct? Yep.
Yeah, 500 square feet.
Yeah, just shy. We found an amazing partner architect firm called Donna Associates. They are as hungry as us to, they want to do good in the world, okay, but they're also as hungry as us to learn how do you build green buildings, right? So we're actually, like, in a weird way, kind of pulling the line. We're like that little tugboat pulling the Titanic and saying, okay, if we go after ILFI, if we do things at grassroots level, if we're more agile, then we can all learn together. And once you systematize being more green, then the impacts of our work, it duplicates, right?
Yeah.
It spreads.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what we were talking about before, is we want this to be a bit of a Sputnik moment in green building. Because, when we think of what the launch of Sputnik did to panic the United States to ramp up their space program, that's kind of, we want to have that effect. And, so we're not looking to, be a monopoly on green building. We want all these other guys to, start moving into some real action.
Yes. Let's show that it's possible. Let's show that it can be done beautifully, inclusively, and target the emotions. Like, it feels good when we help each other. It feels good when we help the planet. And if we can start doing that better, then there was a question.
Okay.
It's Gwen. Do you guys already have auxiliary dwelling units approved in your city?
Oh, that's a great question. ADUs.
Which this would be considered an ADU in Atlanta.
Yeah, I don't know if Detroit has an ADU ordinance just yet. I know some of the suburbs have. Now, in the city of Detroit's defense is, they are still trying to ramp up, things like their planning department and stuff. So, it wasn't that long ago that the city was in bankruptcy. So right. I think there's talk about it, but yeah, in defense of the city, it may just be a capacity thing, for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you guys are on the cutting edge for that. That's great. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're kind of annoying to the city. We this composted toilet thing is like, they haven't really, they permitted that. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have nothing to lose. Let's go after everything we can and then break the norm. Eric is big into, like I mentioned, earth and construction. Let's get some earth and constructions in Detroit and get that normalized. Mm-hmm. We're too, it's too weird to be eco. It's too weird to be helpful to your neighbor, Let's start to normalize these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also to build on that is, like, when I've gone to cities out west, there's frustration about, like, they're protecting the timber industry and all this. Well, if you go to, like, the Pacific Northwest, I mean, I love them, but a lot of their economy is based on timber. So you're going to get some resistance. Here in Michigan, they clear cut the state 100 years ago. So it's minuscule if existent at all. So you don't necessarily have that political machine to fight back here.
So back to the originating question, Gwen. So this is actually the core structure on the lot. So this won't be considered an ADU in Atlanta. If it's If it's adjacent to your primary residence or the dwelling unit, then yeah. But I do like that question because, we are thinking scalability. Can we scale down? Or not for the organization, but for the size of the building. Can we scale it down? Can we scale it up? And obviously we can't answer that fully yet, but that is in our crosshairs.
Yeah, I really like what you guys are doing, especially the social aspect. And I asked because our zoning right now is passing our comprehensive development plan, and they're talking, things like this are good for affordable housing, right? But it's being used against us. So for society, and the reason is they are saying that this is going to be beneficial for people by putting it in their backyards or side of their house because it helps to have additional income. But to build sometimes the ADUs is really out of the range of affordability for someone whose home is already paid for. But as development comes, they can't afford the taxes. They don't have the base to pay it. And what's happening is people that have money are able to move into them. So listening to what you guys are saying is really great because you're coming from the ground up and are really bringing the community members in. And so they already have ownership of it versus someone that's a very high income or already coming in at $50,000 jobs, snatching them all up.
That's right.
Yeah.
These are, no, you said it well. Those everything you mentioned it's almost like a barrier to divide the socioeconomic classes. So you have to overcome the 20% down. You have to have the capital to be able to invest in something like this. And that's really not what we're working
really
with.
Sorry to jump in here, but we are over time. So I think we need to kind of wrap it up.
Sum it up
slowly.
Sure.
But definitely, I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of whatever you wanted to say in addition to say it now. And of course, we can stay in touch about follow-up questions and the discussion can continue. Just for the purpose of this session, we need to see that we wrap it up soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Max.
So, do you have the link for the fundraiser?
Let me jump
that might be
that.
helpful for him.
So I have this deck that we shared, and it's in the recording. In our fall newsletter, we send this out to our distribution, which is not tremendously large yet, but we are growing. We have 2 fundraisers that are going on to help us raise money for Unity House. One is it's actually a product that you can purchase. We designed this and developed this with a local artist. We made little green maps. You get a view of what Detroit looks like, but it's unique that we don't highlight the main core institutions that everyone recognizes, like the Renaissance Center, these big. We actually highlight the grassroots and the solar sustainability projects that are going on throughout the city. So we call it a Detroit Green Map. Very cool, hand printed, limited print. These are available to purchase and shipping throughout the country. And then the other one is what Eric alluded to before. We're utilizing IOB as a crowdfunding campaign. IOB is focused on like community-based projects. So we got that approved. We've been working with IOB. We raised out of for this phase of the campaign, we're looking for $36,000. We've raised a little bit more. Right here it says 19.2. We've raised 20.7, I should say. So we're 2/3 of the way, almost. So we are definitely looking for support, interest, or whoever from your networks might see the value in what we're doing and would want to support. We're making a lot of progress. We're building this thing that we showed you with the neighbors. We're doing great stuff with the skilled trades programs throughout the city, welders, electricians, heavy machinery. We're saying, okay, let's build this dang thing together because I promise you the green movement is coming. So let's skill up. Let's get our people ready, and let's all win together. So I think that's a good summary. We can adjourn it there. I really, really do appreciate your time on a Saturday.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Eric and I.
I know we took up a lot of your Saturday, but thank you so much.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. No, it was super interesting. And I think it was a total success. I mean, we weren't sure with the internet, but the connection was very good and we could see a lot. I think this is way more interesting than doing a PowerPoint slideshow from an office. So really, really great. And thank you for making this possible, for, doing it together and showing us both what you have done and also what you want to do. And maybe we can get some more momentum here from people who watch this online, sharing it with their friends and networks so that we can raise this last bit in the gap towards building Unity House and keeping this going. This would be phenomenal.
Wow, I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much.